Okay, so just try. It's very hard. It's very hard to do, especially with social media. Just try to compare yourself to yourself. Unless you're an identical twin, nobody else is like you.
Welcome to the Mastering Diabetes audio experience, where we'll teach you how to reverse insulin resistance, achieve your ideal body weight, gain energy, and get your best A1C following almost 100 years of evidence-based research.
We're on a bold mission to reverse insulin resistance in 1 million people. We're glad to have you joining us.
Today we have an awesome episode. Today we're going to be talking with Joey Thurman of Joey Thurman Fit. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode because we did a deep dive here into understanding fitness. Not only just the benefits of fitness, but the actual how-to. How do you incorporate fitness into your lifestyle? That is the theme of today's podcast, right? And what we're doing is we're actually breaking it down into 3 different archetypes, 3 different types of people. Type of person number 1 is the individual who doesn't exercise at all, doesn't have a fitness regimen in their life right now, is a relatively sedentary individual and just wants to get more fitness in, but doesn't know how to start the game mentally or physically. Archetype number 2 is the individual who already has a fitness regimen in their lifestyle. They exercise 15, maybe 30 minutes a day. They do it because they enjoy it and they get a lot of benefit out of it. How do you get this? How do you take your fitness to the next level and continue to get more benefits over the course of time? And then archetype number 3 is the individual who exercises between 30 and 60 minutes per day, loves exercise. It's not a problem for them to do it. The question is, how do you take your current regimen and take it to the next level as well so that you can continue to get not only the physical benefits, but as with the metabolic benefits and the mental health benefits as well. Now, Joey Thurman himself is a fitness, nutrition, and health expert. He's the author of 365 health and fitness hacks that could save your life. And he's a host of the Fat or Future podcast, which we were on recently. He was named the best trainer in Chicago by the Chicago Sun-Times in 2015. And he's newbeauty.com's top 3 favorite celebrity trainers. This guy's very smart. He's one of the fittest guys I've ever seen before. He's downright intimidating to stand next to. Trust me, I work out all the time, and his arms are the size of my legs, and my arms are the size of his fingers. No joke. Like, this guy is very fit. He's been all over the place. He's been on Good Morning America, The Kelly and Ryan Show, ABC, Fox, you name it. He has a TEDx talk. And he's also been featured in publications like Men's Health, Women's Health, Pop Sugar, U.S. News and World Report, Livestrong.com, Fitness Magazine, Bodybuilding.com. I mean, the list goes on. It's ridiculous. So today's episode is really a how-to, and I want you guys to sort of think about it in terms of how do you take your existing fitness regimen and how do you take it just one notch higher? Because there's so many benefits that come along with fitness, and our goal here is to try and make fitness not intimidating. Okay, I don't want you to constantly be worried about, injuring yourself or sort of frustrated with the fact that, you don't know how to start fitness. You don't know how much to do. You don't know when to do it. You don't know, the logistics around fitness. Okay, we're trying to make it real simple, real fun. And regardless of whether you're archetype 1, 2, or 3, you can get benefits at all stages of the process. So let's dive right into it. Hope you guys enjoy it. As always, do us a favor, head over to the Apple Podcast store and leave us a review. Those reviews actually go really far. And even if you could just give us a heads up, just say, hey, you guys are awesome, this is great. Or, you know what, I don't like this podcast, I think it sucks. I just want your honest feedback. Whatever you can do would be fantastic. We appreciate you very much, and let's get right into it. Joey, I am stoked to have you here on the podcast today. How you doing today?
Man, I'm double stoked, exponentially stoked to be on the podcast, man.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, you actually, part of the reason why I'm excited is because fitness is one of my favorite subjects of all. And here at Mastering Diabetes, we talk a lot about diet because diet is sort of like the cornerstone. And, most of your metabolic health can be dramatically improved when you switch to a plant-based diet and significantly clean up the food that you're consuming. But in addition to that, part of the Mastering Diabetes method is also to be to perform fitness on a daily basis and make fitness a sort of like cornerstone of your daily regimen. And you, my friend, have that down pat. So let's get into the details here today about how people can think about getting involved in fitness and how they can find a way to do it in a sustainable manner so that it doesn't feel like it's like work and it's frustrating and it's annoying and it's just like too much.
Right. You got it. I mean, that's probably the main thing that people struggle with is, I've told you this before, but sometimes you just got to get off the couch, and this is not a sprint to the finish line. So we need to have these tangible things that just can make us healthier, where we're not trying to get on a cover of a magazine.
Yeah, amen to that. And I think for a lot of people, fitness can be intimidating. Like changing your diet can be intimidating, right? If I'm telling you that you would benefit from eating more plants in your diet, right? For a lot of people, they're sort of like, oh, wait a minute. So I have to give up eggs. I got to give up fish. I got to give up chicken. I got to give up meat, right? And so it's easy to think about like what I have to give up in order to like switch over to eating a more plant-based diet. And there's a sort of like amount of psychological, reasoning that has to go into that process in order to get to a point where you're like, okay, cool. I'm comfortable doing this, right? Yeah. I think personally, fitness is like 10 times harder. Because, for a lot of people who haven't been active for a significant period of time, maybe they were never active as a kid, maybe they haven't been active during their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and now they're at a point where they just don't have the fitness base. It can be intimidating to look at someone like you and say like, oh my God, that guy can do handstand push-ups without balancing against a wall. Like that guy can do, he can run a mile in 6 minutes. Like I'm never going to get to that point. Yeah. And so as a result of that, people look at you and people sort of like look at your overall philosophy, you and other, fitness trainers, and they're just like, man, I don't want to, like, it's too hard. Like, I'm not interested in doing that. Right. So you have a book coming out at the end of 2022 called The Bare Minimum. Right. Yeah. So let's go into a little bit here about like, what is the bare minimum that, people living with diabetes or heart disease or, or overweight can do to dramatically improve their health?
Sure, man. And one thing, I can't do a handstand push-up without touching the wall.
I'm just guessing that you could.
I played college hockey, so I've got some messed up shoulder and back problems. So that's just like impingement. But here's the thing. I used to be this scrawny kid. I used to be, if anybody remembers back in the day, there was a cartoon character named Gumby. And he was just really scrawny, right? And so that was intimidating for me as well. And at 12, 13, 14 years old, I didn't know anything what I was doing in fitness. And it's still a learning process, no matter what you're doing, whether it's eating, nutrition, sleeping, mindset. There's an entire plethora of things. So the reason why I came up with the concept, the bare minimum, is because people see these things, especially with social media, right? They see this inspirational and aspirational things where somebody's doing this crazy bear crawl or handstand push-up, and like, wow, that's interesting. They'll watch the video. It might have hundreds of thousands of views, but no way they're going to do that, nor should they do that. When I see that, I think, yeah, that's entertaining, but that is completely asinine to what you should be doing. I mean, there's the minimum effective dose, and any little bit adaptation that your body's going to achieve just from doing that little bit extra, it may just sound like, oh, wow, this is really simple. But it is simple, especially for people starting. So you don't need to have an entire compilation of weights or go to a scary gym or anything. Literally, we can do a bunch of different things that can just get you off of the couch, that can get you moving a little bit more, which will help with the nutrient absorption, what's happening with your food, with your recovery, with your sleep, everything. So that's where this concept lies. And I think people will look at someone like me and they think, wow, I can't get to that point. Well, me 15 years ago, I would look at myself and think the same thing. But then I realized, like, hey, let's take this step by step. I hired a coach and a trainer, and I started learning from other people and realizing that I was doing way too much too fast. I would pick up a Muscle and Fitness magazine and like, oh, let me do this program in here that a bodybuilder was doing that's glows in the dark because they're on so many steroids. Because like that's the thing. If you're a professional bodybuilder, IFBB pro, they are 100% on steroids. Yep. And this isn't a surprise. They're not testing. Like, I'm not saying they're not working hard and they're not eating that way to grow that much, but you literally can't get a pro card if you're not juicing just because everybody else is.
You can
so people look at that, and they're just, they get so intimidated. And you're right, man.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, I could be wrong, but I think that our audience basically has like 3 different, personas in it. Persona number 1 are people that just don't exercise, period, end of story. They might be slightly overweight. They might feel like they don't have any base in fitness. And as a result of that, they're like, their fitness is not really like a conversation that's happening with them, and it's not a daily practice. Archetype number 2 are people that are involved in some type of fitness regimen, but they're doing, maybe like 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, and they're interested in doing it, but they find that like maybe their joints hurt, their muscles hurt, and maybe they don't have very much experience with it. And then archetype number 3 are people who are involved in fitness on a daily basis. They're going strong. They exercise 30 minutes a day easily. They enjoy it. It's fun for them, and it's a part of their lifestyle, right? So let's kind of walk through each different persona and try and come up with like a reasonable prescription so that it's fun and it's exciting, and all 3 of those personas can actually turn this into something that's like a sustainable daily practice, right?
Got it. Okay, let's go with number 1. So somebody who, if you're listening and fitness just scares you, and you think that it's going to hurt, or even you just walking around, maybe you're carrying 30, 40, 50 plus pounds more, walking around, that's a lot of stress on your joints, right? And there's no doubt, and research is irrefutable, that you need to be moving more. But I think we get caught up in thinking like, oh, I need 30 minutes a day. I need to be like that archetype number 3. Well, those people didn't start, they probably weren't on 30 minutes a day. They started from somewhere. So here's the thing. You need to get moving more, and these can be little things like they call non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT. So basically, the little movements, if I'm sitting here, I'm literally twiddling my thumbs. I'm not kidding. This can start burning calories, and people that just fidget more can burn 800 to, depending on what research you look at, 2,500 more calories a day just from little movements, tapping your feet, moving around, right? That just creates that little bit of a metabolism spike right there. So just think about where you can pick up those little movements throughout the day, like whether it's twiddling your thumbs or, just standing up every now and then, that can help. But one of the things that I prescribe people right away is simply walking after they eat. This is the simplest thing. Because it can help with postprandial digestion. It can help with the insulin response. It has similar effects to metformin, as your audience is probably very aware, like number 1 diabetes prescribed drug. So once you eat, like it doesn't need to be like you're done chewing and that bolus goes down and you're like, okay, let me get up and walk right away. You can wait a few minutes, get up and walk around, go take a walk outside for 10 minutes, a brisk walk, like your grandma used to mall walk. Just walk outside. If you can't walk, if you've got a little bike, get on a bike, a stationary bike, elliptical, anything, some sort of movement. When I say walking, I just mean some sort of low-level activity. And right there, if you do that 3 times a day at 10 minutes, Cyrus, you got a PhD. What's 10 times 3?
A lot. 30.
30 minutes of movement. Look at that. You're telling me if you're eating 3 times a day, you can't just take 10 minutes to walk right there. So maybe you just start doing that every single day. And that right there is your minimum. And then eventually we can start adding it. Maybe instead of 10 minutes a day, maybe it's 15 minutes. Maybe the walk turns into a very light jog every now and then. Maybe it's a light jog for half of a block. And then you walk for another 2 blocks, or a jog for 10 seconds. Anything that little additional extra stressor to your body can be good. But if you're like, hey, I'm 30 pounds overweight, I'm going to go for a 30-minute run, you're going to be debilitated probably for several days after because there's so much stress on your joints. Your muscles are not firing in the correct order to take load off of those joints as well. So the easiest thing you can do is just walk after you eat. If you think, hey, I only eat 1 or 2 times a day, maybe you're on a time-restricted feeding, you're fasting, fine. Try to walk 15 minutes twice a day. Okay, these are little things that you can do. Or maybe you take a brisk walk for 5 or 10 minutes before you eat. Also can help, with the nutrient absorption. And then you can do a few minutes afterwards. Or holding just planks, simple movements where it's sit down on your couch and then stand up. Sit down and then stand up. You just did 2 squats. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's literally 2 squats every couple hours. And that right there, it may seem so just minuscule, but it will add up. There's a bunch of different principles, whether it's the minimum effective dose or like Henneman size principle, all these different things where that little adaptation process can help out. If you did 1 set of bench press or push-ups, or most people probably shouldn't be doing anterior loading, so let me say that. Let me say 1 set of like a deadlift or a row, close to failure, like 1 or 2 reps in reserve. That is shown to increase your strength, and you can actually add a little bit of muscle tissue because you've never done that before. Somebody like me really wouldn't do much. But if you've never worked out before, or it's been years since you played high school football,
Right.
whatever it was, that right there creates enough adaptation process where you will start to feel the change first, and then you will
Okay,
start to
I'm
see
actually
the
really
change.
glad that you talked about going for a walk after you eat, because specifically with people living with diabetes, I cannot stress how effective this is at lowering your postprandial glucose response. Okay, so what that means is that suppose you were to eat a meal, and your meal would, your blood glucose would go up to, call it between 160 and 180 within a 2-hour period after eating your meal. And you see this pattern happening over and over and over again. Okay, if you literally ate the same food and expected that response, but then when you're done with eating, call it 15 minutes later, you go for a walk. And just like Joey's saying, you go for like a 10-minute walk, maybe a 15-minute walk. You can literally watch as your blood glucose, instead of hitting that 160 or 180, will hit like a 135, and then it'll come right back down. I mean, it is so powerful, and it is instant. It is like, in this world of instant gratification, if that's the way that your brain works and you want instant results, literally just do that, and that makes a huge, huge, huge impact. And then in addition to that, like you were saying, you can also do exercise before you eat. And that right there is sort of like priming the muscle tissue to become a little bit more glucose responsive, so that when you do eat, then insulin can signal to the tissues to be like, hey, knock, knock, there's glucose in the blood. Do you want to take it up? And then that glucose can find a home, and it can keep your blood glucose down in the postprandial state. So one other thing that I want.
Yeah, I mean, people ask how I stay so lean is that right there. Like what you just said. I literally walk almost every single time. It's kind of those non-negotiables for me. Like I've got abs and I'm single digit body fat, which by the way, people probably necessarily shouldn't be single digit. We need a little bit of fat. But I do make money by the way I look sometimes. So
be
let's
it.
just let me put that caveat in there, right? So, right. Here's like just the walking afterwards, or if you call your exercise snacking prior to it, where 5 to 7 minutes, and there's a bunch of different research on this, whether that's like an incline walk or just like even just if we're still talking about Archetype 1, right? I wouldn't have you do high knees, but that doesn't mean you can't do a marching in place where you're getting your knee up and you're getting that hip flexor activation. You're getting some core stability and some bracing out of it. Just literally march in place, up and down, as high as you can pull your leg up. When I say high knees, some people use anything as an excuse to think, I can't get my knee up to my hip crease. Well, as high as you can bring your knee, that's a high knee for you. Every body, BODY, is completely different.
That's a great call. Okay, so now that we're still talking about archetype number 1, I think one of the dangers and one of the experiences that a lot of people, find is that they go from 0 to something that's a significant strain on their muscles and their joints, and then as a result of that, like you said, they feel debilitated. They feel excessively sore. They might get this delayed onset muscle soreness called DOMS. Or their joints might hurt for multiple days afterwards, and then it becomes discouraging, and then they're like, you know what, this whole fitness thing is dumb. I'm not going to do this anymore, right? So let's hammer this point home a little bit more here, right? If you're starting at 0, you must inch your way towards a more sustainable fitness regimen on a daily basis. But if you go from doing absolutely nothing to 15 minutes of like medium to high intensity exercise, good luck. You're going to be on the couch for the next week, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing here. People will use anything as an excuse. And exercise is probably one of the number one things. And I say this frequently, I get in trouble for it. But we are a product of our own pain and what we do, right? So often people, like if you're not eating well, if you're not sleeping well, and you're not doing anything to fix it, well, then what are you complaining for? You complain to me when you've tried everything under the sun, or is it under
everything
the sun or
inside
under
of the sun, I think.
under the moon. There you go. So, but here, you need to look at what you're doing right now. Just do a daily life assessment, and this is great in general. Write down how several days look. Okay, so I get up in the morning at 6 a.m. I woke up 3 times to pee. I didn't sleep that well. I feel groggy. At 7 a.m. I had a glass of water. At 8 a.m. I sat back on the couch. I fell asleep for 2 hours. I had X, Y, and Z to eat. I did work, right? Start writing all that out. And then right there, you've just got a little outline of how your week and your life is looking. And then think, where can I add these little bits of movement in? Okay, so I started doing the 10-minute walking 2 or 3 times a day. I haven't done any sort of weight training whatsoever. Well, My shoulders are completely rounded forward. Should I work on something in the anterior that's going to just exacerbate that issue? Or maybe I should work on my posture. Okay, like even look up some posture exercises, like retraction exercises, where you just basically pull your shoulder blades back and think about not making your neck go a turtleneck, just depress, come down, just bring your hands wide and back and squeeze your shoulder blades together. 10, 15 of those every couple of hours. That right there, the little bit is just making you more aware of that text posture, all those different things. Can you bring your laptop a little bit higher when you're looking at it so you're not stressing out your cervical spine so much? These little movement patterns. Then say, okay, let me do a full body workout. But people think full body and they think, let me do 3, 5, 10 sets, Cyrus, as you were saying, and they're completely shot. Can you do one set of an exercise for each body part? Literally one set, feel a little bit of a burn, which by the way is lactate, not lactic acid. We don't produce lactic acid. That's a common misconception. So like maybe you do, right, like you do a set of rows with bands or just a retraction. Maybe you do some bicep curls, maybe a set of squats, and maybe a front plank. That right there could be 5 minutes of working out. And then the next day you just do low-level cardio because you don't want to hit those same muscle groups twice in a row, especially, I mean, there's some different protocols and stuff if I'm training a celebrity, but we're talking about Archetype I here. So then the next day you focus on some breath work, some meditation, some easy things, and then you do that low-level walking. And then the next day maybe you think, okay, let me do that same exact workout again. You don't need to change, and this was back in the day with people like muscle confusion and all that sort of stuff. Muscle confusion, really what that is just not being bored. That's pretty much what it is. Like, you know, like
the anti-boredom technique, isn't it?
Yeah, just the anti-boredom. I mean, how many ways can you shorten up a bicep, Cyrus, right? How many ways can I do this?
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm doing a bicep curl and you're just moving your forearm towards your shoulder and you're trying to shorten up that tissue and lengthen as much as possible, right? Mm-hmm. So you can do all sorts of crazy different bicep exercises, which will just negate some of that boredom, but you can do the same program for 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks as long as you start adding a little bit extra, relatively every workout. It doesn't need to be every single workout. And that's where people, especially the type 1s, just beat themselves up because they see their neighbor who lost 100 pounds and now they've got to work out much harder because they see what their neighbor is trying to do. Well, because their metabolic rate is down a little bit because they've got less tissue on them. So they need to work harder to keep that off. Okay, so just try. It's very hard. It's very hard to do, especially with social media. Just try to compare yourself to yourself. Unless you're an identical twin, nobody else is like you.
You know, it's funny. I heard an expression yesterday for the first time that I thought was absolutely brilliant. It says, don't measure your results using someone else's ruler. And I was like, wow, that is brilliant. I'm going to steal that, right? But you're right. That, like you can only really compare yourself to yourself. And when you do, you are bound to see significant progress over the course of time if you can create a sustainable regimen and stop. I mean, you can look at other people for inspiration. Sure. But, if you're looking at somebody else who is doing handstand push-ups or is able to do, 100 air squats in, 2 minutes and say, oh, I should be able to do that. How come I can't do that? And then you try it and all of a sudden, boom, for the next week, 2 weeks, you're debilitated. It's not worth trying, right?
Yeah, and then we also compare ourselves to ourselves from 20 years ago. Like, are you going to take the same vehicle you had in high school and race it against a brand new one right now? It's probably not doing well. It doesn't make sense to compare my 17-year-old self with my 38-year-old self. I know I look amazing, but look, you just can't do that, right? Because like we were brand new when we were younger. Like we're fresh cells and skin, and like you cannot compare that, right? So like maybe if it was 6 months ago and say, okay, I was doing this 6 months ago, that might be a little bit more of a measure, to use your analogy there. But 20, 30 years prior, and you've had all of these years of just being stagnant and complacent. Don't compare yourself to that. Just think about what you're doing right now. What can you add right now to your regimen, whether that's fitness, nutrition, sleeping, mindset, family. There's a bunch of different things that all go into that. People are like, oh, it's diet and exercise. Well, I say it's sleep, diet, and exercise. So I know that we're talking about a lot of working out here, but if your sleep's not on point and you're off, everything else in your day is going to be off.
Yeah. Okay. So what can people compare themselves to? So you're saying that you should compare yourself to yourself. Totally fine. Mm-hmm. I should compare myself today to who I was yesterday, or who I was a week ago, or who I was a month ago? Like, what's a reasonable time frame for me to be able to sort of like compare my current status versus?
Yeah, I mean, I literally think where you're at right now, day one, and we wake up and we have different feelings, and sometimes we don't feel as well. So Cyrus, if you were gonna do a heavy leg day today, and you came in to train with
Yep.
me, and you didn't sleep well, or you had a cross country flight, and I say, how you feeling? And I'm like, man, I didn't sleep well. Got in a fight with a family member, whatever, and you're just fried out. I'm not gonna load 300 pounds on your back, right? Because I'm not comparing you right now to the you were a week ago when you had more sleep and you were ready to go and get that workout,
Yeah.
because you're just not going to be in tune with your body.
call.
You shouldn't load that weight on your back. You shouldn't go down into that ass to grass squat right now. Maybe we do some bicep curls. Maybe we do some ab work, something that is less risk of injury. So right there, I just think taking that self-assessment day by day is great. And then you start writing these things down, and let's take an example of a squat, right? You've got a 200-pound squat today. It doesn't mean you should have a 300-pound squat the next time you work out, but maybe it's just a small percentage. Maybe it's 202 or 205. Maybe it's an extra rep or so. So I think same thing as weight loss, isn't linear, and same thing with weight training. We want just the gradual curve to go up and start adding the progressive overload to that. So just looking at where you're at the day before, the week prior, I think that's good. But even weeks on end, we have a really stressful event, and that's going to fry out our entire system, and we're just not going to be ready to handle the load or do the race or whatever it is, So just being realistic about your goals and where you're at, and it's okay if if you start working out and you got a bad workout and you didn't do what you did the day before. That's fine, but what is that a common trend? Then we need to look at something. What's happening on a hormonal basis? What's happening with your sleep? What's happening with your personal relationships? Then we start doing that assessment. So if it's a common theme where you start declining, you could be overtraining as well, especially those type 1 archetypes, as we talk about it. They hit too much too fast, and their body isn't just ready to recover and grow.
Amen to that. And just for clarity, when you say type 1 archetype, we're referring to the archetype, not type 1 diabetes, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, so let's go to archetype number 2. So again, this is the individual who is performing some type of fitness on a daily basis, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes here, there. And then they're finding that it's something that they can incorporate into their daily life, and they're getting benefits for their metabolic health. And they're also seeing some changes within their own physical body. Are the prescriptions and the sort of like general recommendations that you would give for archetype number 2 different than you would give for archetype number 1?
I'd say archetype number 2 might want to dial it in a little bit more. So maybe they've been working out for several months or years. Generally, when you say kind of beginner, it's you haven't worked out in years, or you've never worked out yourself. So maybe you've been working out for 0 to 2 years right now. So kind of once you get past that 1 or 2 year mark, and it's a habit, and you have to do it 3 times a week, or how many ever times it is, where it's that non-negotiable for you. Then you start looking at, okay, I'm working out 10 or 15 minutes a day, but have you been specifically looking at what you're doing, or you just kind of go into the gym and you hit the chest press machine, you go on to the next machine, you go on whatever, and you're like, okay, I feel good, I've moved my body today, I've gotten a lot of muscle contractions, which will help a plethora of things. But maybe you're starting to plateau a little bit because there isn't a specific plan for you. So there's some numbers that you can go off. So 5 sets per week per muscle group will maintain your muscle tissue. So maybe you added some muscle tissue the past couple of years when you started working out. Okay, am I doing 5 sets of biceps, 5 sets of back, 5 sets of shoulders, so on and so forth, right? Taking it to close to that failure range. You don't need to be to the point of failure where you're going to drop the weight over your head or anything, but 1 or 2 reps in reserve. If you've got somebody spotting you, then maybe you can go to that range where maybe 10% of your exercises are to that point where it's like, wow, I can't lift it one more time if somebody was holding a gun to my head, right? So look at that. What are you doing? Take that assessment there. And if you want to add more muscle tissue, about 10 sets to 20 sets per week, depending on the research, will add muscle tissue to your body right there. And muscle tissue is metabolically active, and that's great to have. So, okay, look at what your workouts, like maybe I was doing 6 sets per week for chest and back and whatever. Maybe you start adding 1 or 2. Can you push that a little bit more? Can you slow down your tempo? Have you been doing the same workout for 2 or 3 years with the same exact weight? All right, that needs to change. I mean, for guys, International Chest Day is generally on Monday, right? Even change, right? Even changing, tell me on Monday, most dudes are hitting chest.
Most dudes are hitting chest on Monday, and there's leg day is avoided by all weightlifters around the world.
Yeah, pretty much. Leg day might be once a month for most fellas, but hitting legs, I mean, we have so many muscle tissues in our legs. So if we do a lot of leg training, especially like a deadlift and a squat or something that requires a lot of stability, we have an increase in testosterone. We have an increase in growth hormone. There was a study that came out where they did, it was 2 workouts a week at 6 sets per compound muscle group. So it's like 6 sets of deadlifts at 10 reps to failure with 2 minutes in between. And they increased their serum testosterone levels tremendously, just 2 per week. So, I mean, obviously there's more benefits for going a little bit further, but right there, think 6 sets, that's actually not that many, but 2-minute rest in between. And they had to do 10 sets pretty much to failure where they couldn't do another one. So the body is amazing at adapting, and that's Henneman's size principle right there. So that's really amazing at adapting, but it was that 2-minute in between, not an extra second longer, and obviously a regimented study. So take that assessment. The walking is still good. You should still maintain that walking, regardless if you're trying to add a bunch of muscle tissue. Like if you're doing long bouts of cardio and you're trying to become a bodybuilder, that's, you probably don't want to do that. But for health, as we're talking about for this type 2 archetype and just trying to get a little bit more, maybe you do 15 minutes of weight training and then maybe you do a 10-minute light jog, which weight training will predominantly during that burn up glycogen, or storage form of carbohydrates, and then getting that cardio in afterwards will help you burn a little bit more fat. Maybe right there, maybe that's the minimum that you needed, just a 10-minute jog or elliptical or a bike. Whatever, or go outside when you can, get some vitamin D, or chase around your dog or your kid. Those little bit extras will help out a lot. And obviously the diet is huge too, but I think type 2 ones can just bring it up a little bit more.
Okay, cool. So let me ask you this question now. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, the gym's not for me. It's an intimidating environment. I don't like to go there. I don't like to carry weights. I don't like to lift them. I don't like the grunting. I don't like the atmosphere, the environment, right? And so I think a lot of people they opt to not go to the gym, and instead they're like, I'm just going to go on a walk. I'm going to go for a jog. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to get on my bike. And they sort of like limit themselves to doing cardiovascular exercise only with no actual resistance exercise. So would you say that that's okay? Is that recommended? Or if an individual is only doing cardiovascular exercise, is there like a simple way that they can put resistance exercise into their lifestyle without being overly intimidating?
Yes, and one thing the pandemic has shown us is that we don't necessarily need a gym. I mean, how many people cancel their gym memberships that they probably weren't going to anyways, right? You don't necessarily need a gym to be healthy and to look good. If you're a pro bodybuilder, you're a power lifter, yes, you need that equipment and you need that. But having a pair of dumbbells or bands, like mini bands and power bands, those things go a long way. I did an entire program in OpenFit just with body weight and bands. So they really tremendous, and that gives that variable resistance. So bands are much less intimidating. So to answer your question, you have to be doing some sort of resistance training, but people think that when they hear resistance, they think dumbbells, they think barbells, they think that grunting. Your body is your own resistance. If you did a push-up, it's about 67 to 69% of your body weight. So if you went into the gym, Cyrus, and I loaded up a bar to do a bench press with 69% of your body weight and you've never worked out before, that's kind of asinine. Like, that's a lot for you to do.
Sure.
But where we're telling all these people to do these regular push-ups right away that are overweight or have never worked out before or can't even like bring their shoulder blades back, they don't even know what that means, they shouldn't be doing a regular push-up. Maybe they do a push-up elevated on a bench with their hands on a bench, which is less stress. Maybe it's on their knees. I like people activating their core and trunk by having their knees off the ground. So that's why I prefer people like do a push-up on the bench or something. But right there, doing one push-up, doing one squat, that is resistance training. Literally squeezing your biceps or squeezing your chest and flexing, to be that dude in the gym or out of the gym, that has shown to actually recruit muscle fiber tissue and have that top-down connection from your brain down to your muscle tissue. When I say, mind-body connection, all that sort of stuff, that can actually help add muscle tissue. So if you're doing tremendous cardio and you think, oh, I'm riding a bike, I'm working my legs, I'm running, I'm working my legs. No, you're not. You are not shortening up that tissue as much as possible. Look up sliding filament theory if you're interested in that. But you need to shorten the tissue as much as possible and lengthen it. When you're on a bike, you're just maybe getting, maybe 30, 40% flexion. When you're running, you're still not getting that. Maybe if you're doing like an uphill sprint, you might get more hamstring and glute activation, but you're not going to build that tissue predominantly the way people are thinking. So squats, lunges, most people have a park around them. I prefer them doing what I call an inverted pull-up, where your feet are on the ground and you just pull up on that bar. Like, yeah, go next to all the kiddos and do a little workout. Okay, you don't need to be able to do a full-on pull-up. If you can't do a full-on pull-up, which most people can't, can you jump up and control yourself down? That's that negative, that eccentric overload, which is even more important, in my opinion, for most individuals than the positive or the concentric motion. So if you want to take that bike ride, my father-in-law started doing this. He'll ride his bike an hour or two a day, then he'll go to the park and he'll knock out on the bench. He'll do 10 or 20 push-ups on the bench. Maybe he'll do some step-ups. Put your foot on there. Step up, control down. Step up, control down. That's resistance training. And then I would like you to track it so you know exactly what's happening and how many sets you're doing in particular. But those little things right there are huge. Anti-rotation, anti-flexion, side planks, front planks done correctly. Think about squeezing your glutes. That'll take pressure off of your lower back. Really good. You don't need to do crunches and sit-ups all day long, which for most people I advise not to. But the little bit right there can help out a lot, and you don't need to necessarily be afraid to do resistance training. And bands that you can buy on Amazon or anything, 10, 20 bucks, you can tie them around a pole, a tree, lots of retraction work, lots of rows, curls, presses, anything that can really help you out a lot.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really like about what you just said is that if you're sort of like, if you're moving your muscle within 30 to 40% of its full range of motion, then within that range, you're actually going to be sort of exercising the muscle tissue. But if you're not working your muscle through an entire range of motion, then you are you're not going to get the full benefit of that exercise. So when you're running, when you're cycling, when you're sort of like hiking, you're working through a very small portion of the total range of your quadriceps, of your hamstrings, of your calf muscles. And it's only when you go through that entire range of motion will you start to see some true muscular development. And that process unto itself, just like you said, can help decrease the amount of glycogen. That's, you can degrade glycogen inside of your muscle tissue, which is a good thing for people living with diabetes. Because if you degrade your glycogen stores, then that increases the responsiveness to insulin the next time you eat.
Yeah, so people, like, especially when they're running or whatever, and they're not getting enough knee flexion, or this happens a lot when people, they're used to running long runs, whatever your long run is. If a mile is a long run for you, sure, that's a long run. But then maybe they do a sprint, and they're not used to getting that proper knee flexion and the hip flexor activation and bringing their knees as high, then often they're going to have a quad problem because they're not actually involving the hip flexors as much to get the hamstrings and glutes involved as they're driving off to get that sprint, because they only became strong, as you said, in that particular motion. So we need to get that full range of movement. And there are protocols where maybe you want to do like a partial rep or something, which might be more towards your Archetype III. But move your muscles, in the entire range of motion, and that will help what they call the amortization phase, and you actually become stronger from being able to go through that entire phase. Because we are the weakest at the longest part of our muscle tissue and the shortest part of our muscle tissue. The in-between range is when we're stronger.
Go into a little bit more detail about that, actually. So you're saying we were weakest at the shortest, when our muscle is contracted the most, and when our muscle is elongated the most. Is that right?
Yeah, so exactly. So think about a pull-up. One of the hardest parts of a pull-up is when you start it. So when we're completely along and the lats are completely stretched out, to start that motion is really hard. But if somebody was on a step box or something, they may be able to go in that in-between range. But then, or chin up, right? And then to get your chin above the bar, That's why chin-ups are so hard, because you actually really need to shorten up that tissue as much as possible to get that chin up, to shorten it as much as you possibly can. So whatever movement you're in, whether that's a squat or lunge or anything, that's when that becomes generally the hardest, is the lengthen and shortening process. So if somebody wants to get it faster and stronger, I would have them, like, let's say we're doing a deadlift. I wouldn't have them drop the bar all the way to the ground. I would have them come down and be able to get out of the hole, what they call faster, without touching that weight down, so their muscles know to fire right away before that weight releases. So we're keeping that contraction, and we're trying to get towards what we call local muscular failure. So there's some different protocols there, but that's why it is much harder. That's why I say when we're doing the example of the pull-up, you jump up, you control yourself down. That right there, we're about 300% stronger controlling something down than pushing or doing the positive motion, whatever that is. Like anybody on a push-up, they could probably control themselves down for a good amount of time, but to push themselves up and push that floor away from them, that's going to feel much harder.
It's so true. When you're at the bottom of a push-up and you're holding, and then you try and go from there just 1 inch higher, man, that is unbelievably challenging.
There you go.
No question. Okay, so let's move to Archetype 3 now. Archetype 3 is the individual who has an active daily exercise regimen. Let's say they work out for approximately half an hour to an hour per day. They perform fitness because they realize that it's beneficial both for their physical body, their emotional body, their mental health. They enjoy performing fitness on a daily basis, and it's something that's just become integrated into their lifestyle because it's become a habit. So what recommendations would you give to somebody who's in that archetype, who is looking to continue to progress with their fitness regimen?
Set a specific goal. You may have been Archetype 2, then you transferred into 3, and you know that you feel good, and you need to move that 30 minutes to an hour a day, whatever your particular modality may be. But setting a specific goal for yourself, whether that's aesthetic, whether that's a race, so you can work towards something. Because there's exercising is great, but training is even better. Training is when you have a goal and you're working towards something on a systematic manner. So, for example, maybe you sign up for a Spartan race. That's amazing. That's great. Like, I love people doing 5Ks and runs, but that's just one modality. So it's like, say, a Spartan, a Tough Mudder, all these obstacle course races where you need a strength component, you need a muscular endurance component, and you need that cardiovascular component, and it's just fun to do and enjoyable. So you sign up for something where it's 6, 8, 10 weeks out, and you think, okay, I need to train for all these different modalities. And then you can have a specific regimen. Okay, where are you weak at? Maybe you've been doing a lot of pull-ups and things, and you can back off on that. Maybe you need to do more shorter sprint duration runs. Maybe you need to work on your 5K split time. So then you start getting this regimen, and you have an entire plan that you can set up. Or maybe it's you're going on a vacation in 6 weeks, or a high school reunion. Literally write everything out, what you're going to do, and plan that out. Okay, I'm going to bed at 9 p.m. every night. I'm going with the circadian sleeping, as they say. Right? Like you're going to sleep when the sun is pretty much going down, and you're waking up when it's getting up, preferably without an alarm. You're honing that in. Okay, you're not waking up all tired and exhausted. And they know, okay, an hour later, I'm getting my run in, or I'm doing my whatever. On Monday, Wednesday, Friday are my cardio days. On Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday are my full body training days. So that's when you really need to have a plan. And the same thing when you're trying to lose the last 5, 10, 15 pounds, you really need to watch every single calorie that's going in your mouth, and the type of food as well, especially if you're struggling with diabetes. Everybody should be watching what they're eating, but that's when you really need to get on a specific regimented plan, and then you hit that, whether it's that Spartan race that you did, or it's the vacation or the high school reunion. You hit that, you enjoy the race, you enjoy people saying like, what have you been doing? You look amazing. And then from there, you can set another goal and plan for yourself. And that's how you're going to continually train for life, as opposed to just, going through the motions, because working out it's amazing. It's great. But we need to have that adaptation response, what they call hormesis, or stressors, right? So you need to add those additional good stressors in your life that will create that adaptation response and just, have you feeling better, number one, but then it'll obviously have you looking better, which is, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of people just want to look better too.
So when it comes to creating a goal, let's go into a little bit more detail here about that. What's the ideal time frame to sort of like set a goal and move towards? Is it like, I'm trying to accomplish something a month from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now? Like, what's a realistic time frame that enables people to become motivated, stay motivated, always have that goal in mind, and to work towards it without getting sort of sidetracked?
Yeah, and it depends on how big that goal is. If somebody say, I want to lose 100 pounds in 6 weeks, well, that's just not feasible, right? Or if you did it, that would not be healthy. You just probably stop eating for 6 weeks. You can't do that. But to notice, muscular change and body change, we can put on maybe 1 to 2 pounds a month of muscle tissue. If you're a newbie, maybe a little bit more, without additional, pharmaceutical help, as I said before, which, we don't want to do that. So 6 weeks, you should start noticing a pretty big difference in your body, right? So if you just want to go down a pant size or two, 6 to 8 weeks, that's a good goal. But if you have an overall goal of losing a tremendous amount of weight, then you set the goal, okay, let's say, 1 to 2 pounds a week, and then you try to extrapolate that. Okay, 1 to 2 pounds a week, maybe I want to lose 8 pounds a month. Then look at how far out that is, and then you set your overall goal, and then each month you think about, okay, I want to drop 8 pounds this month. Some months it may be 7, some months it may be 10, right? So we're just looking at moving towards that goal, and are we progressing that way? And if you're not, then start just doing a little bit more of an assessment. Okay, did I really track everything I was eating? Was my sleeping on point? Was I stressed? Was, work taking me places? Did I have to get in a car more? Was I sitting down an extra little bit? Because one thing with the pandemic, I think people didn't realize, they started looking at their, metabolic rates based off of when they were moving more. And then all of a sudden we were stuck in our houses for months on end. You're like, well, I did this, basal metabolic rate calculation based off my total daily energy expenditure, which just means how often you're moving in a day, basically. And then they're looking at that like, well, wait a minute, I can have 3,000 calories a day, but that was you months ago when you were moving more, when you were office, when you were going back and forth, when you were walking around a lot, when you were taking meetings, when you were more active, and then all of a sudden you were taking Zoom calls for 10 hours a day. Well, you were much less active. So just having that self-awareness is huge, and thinking, is this goal attainable for me? Have I hit it before recently? How does my body respond when I'm doing this? And can I do something extra to help achieve that goal? Maybe it's, especially with goal setting, you need to have a support system. So whether that is, a family, a husband, a wife, a kid, whatever, the support system is huge. But sometimes people do better off not telling people that they're trying to go on a diet or trying to get in shape. Because I think often what happens with that is you've got some people have toxic relationships with others, and then they're sort of, kind of holding themselves down. A person like, oh, you've been working out hard, you can have that piece of cake. You deserve this. But sometimes if you're just eating better and you're going out to a restaurant and you ordered a plant-based meal and you didn't tell people you were plant-based, they're not going to think twice. But if you're telling them that you're on a diet or whatever, they're looking at everything that you're doing. And some of those individuals might just be like, oh, you can have that, or you can order your cake, or you can have your drink. But sometimes keeping it within you, and then if there's a support system like, Mastering Diabetes or anything else, or a Facebook group, people with the same goal and the same commonalities, then right there you can have that support from them. So think about, is your direct support system around you? Are they going to lift you up, or are they going to pull you down? If they're going to pull you down, then you don't need to tell them what's happening. 6 months down the road, you look amazing and you just ran a race or you did whatever, then let's say, what did you do? And then maybe you start helping them out.
Okay, so what do you do with somebody whose support system, like direct support system within their household, is not conducive to their lifestyle? In other words, somebody's like, okay, I'm going to try and adopt a plant-based diet, or I'm going to become more fit. And their husband, their wife, their sister, their brother, their kids are putting up roadblocks, and they're like, why are you doing that? That's inconvenient. I want to eat meat. Stop doing this, right? And all of a sudden they're just like, man, I can't even, in my own kitchen, I feel like a prisoner, right? Is there any strategies that you have for like trying to sort of liberate yourself from this like frustration? Yeah,
so I noticed this a lot with heads of household, or especially the moms, like if we're stereotypically saying a lot of the moms are doing the cooking and cleaning, and they have a lot of responsibilities on them. And when all of a sudden when they want to do something for themselves, everybody else is like, wait, what's happening? Why you're doing something for yourself? You're not taking care of me right now. But you need to realize if you are that person that's taking care of everybody in your life and you're neglecting your own health, you can't take care of them, because eventually you won't be healthy. So I think maybe explaining to them, like, look, I understand that it may seem like an inconvenience to you right now, but I can't be here for you. I can't take you to the soccer games. I can't cook for you. I can't clean. I can't do all this sort of stuff if I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not healthy. Have that conversation with them. Hopefully they will be with you and agree to that. Otherwise, you may have to do additional things where you may have to make separate meals, and that may sound just like a pain in the ass, but you may have to make a separate meal for yourself and for your family. If they, aren't getting off of the soda, like, okay, like you don't need to drink it. You can have, tea or water or some, sparkling water, something like that. Add some lemon to it for some flavor, and you can just start doing it that way. And then if they get to the point where they're not going to support you, then you may need to take a little bit more drastic measures. Maybe you need to change your schedule up a little bit where you're not eating with them at the same time. I said fasting is great. So maybe the breakfast is one of those trigger points for you, where it's, let's say it's pancakes and sausage and something that you probably shouldn't be eating. Okay, maybe you adjust your schedule where you're going to work a little bit earlier, and you're not there with them during that point. So just start being aware of how everybody else around you is. But what I do find is when people push through that, and they've got these roadblocks, and they go around, they jump over, however you get around the roadblock, doesn't matter, just get through it, get around it. When they start having that difference and change, and they experience a glow. I actually had a client a few weeks ago send me this message, like, my husband said, I've never seen a glow like you in this before. And then her husband started eating healthier and doing things that she was doing because he wanted that in himself too. So I don't know if he was not supportive in the beginning or not. I'm just saying, but a lot of times people will recognize, wow, then put a little bit of effort in for, a couple of months. And I want that too. I want that feeling. I want to be able to sleep well. I want to have that glow. So be the change that other people want to see.
Yeah, that's phenomenal advice. I mean, you're absolutely right in the sense that I think a lot of people do experience that when they start to make the changes that they deem necessary for themselves, it becomes contagious. At first, it can be weird, and you can be kind of socially awkward, and you all of a sudden feel like you're getting interrogated for your choices. But within a short period of time, once you start to display to the outside world that you're changing for the better, right? Maybe your skin looks better. Maybe you lose a little bit of weight. Maybe you just have more energy. Maybe your eyes are whiter. Maybe you're just a happier person. All of a sudden, right. I definitely have noticed this in my history where people all of a sudden started looking at me. They're like, okay, so what are you doing? How come you have so much energy? How come you wake up at 6:30 in the morning and don't go to sleep till 11 o'clock at night and you are always high energy? I'm just like, I'll show you what I'm doing. It's not a big deal, right? But I think you're right in the sense that like you have to sort of like take on the desire you have to start being the change that you want to see, and then just like kind of put up with like a little bit of frustration at the beginning if like your whole support structure around you is interrogating you and questioning you. But then at a certain point, people are going to flip over and they're going to be like, wait a minute, give me some info here. I want the same thing that you're getting, right? Which is cool. It's when it gets fun, actually. So. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great to see that.
I feel like we could talk for hours here. Now that we're done with the introduction to the podcast, let's get into the actual meat of the conversation here, right? Okay, sure. Let's go into a couple of things. You have a book coming out in the end of 2022, so it's a ways from now. But in that book, you talk about the bare minimum.
Yep.
Right. The bare minimum is a concept here where you're basically, correct me if I'm wrong, you're trying to make it unintimidating for people to incorporate fitness into their lifestyle, regardless of whether you're archetype 1, 2, or 3. How can you get results emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally from an exercise regimen? What's the smallest amount of change that's necessary in order to start you on the process of improving your overall health, right? So, put in a pitch here for your book and why people should get it down the road and why people can start to incorporate this idea that like a minimum effective dose can actually get you a really long way.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm going to apologize. I'm sorry to everybody out there who I have intimidated, who I have made it seem that you need to do all these crazy exercises and you need to work out for so long. And I'm apologizing for an entire industry right now. And that's the fitness industry. And there's books on books on books that have all these crazy unattainable diets, or if day 7 you put sugar in your coffee, you need to go back to day 1 because poor you, like, let me spank you, you did bad. No, that's not what this is about. I'm writing this book for you to get off the couch to the start line, not for people trying to get to the finish line. I'm not writing it for somebody who's been working out for 20, 30 years consistently and making sure that they go to the gym and they're watching every single calorie that goes into their body. People like that can gain some knowledge from the book, but that's not who I'm writing it for. I'm writing it for my client who calls me up, who just doesn't have the confidence, for the person that's overweight, for the people that are listening to this podcast. So it's meant to be read front to back, but you can also flip to any section. You want to flip to the brain section. You want to flip to the sleep section. You want to flip to the motivation section. You can get something out of that. And doing all these little things, or maybe you do something in one chapter, just the one thing, that will help everything else. And then that's where the minimum method comes in. So maybe it's that walking. Maybe that's the one thing you started doing for yourself, even if you don't start eating better. Okay, I started feeling better after that. Then you start incorporating, let me do just a breathing technique, whether it's box breathing or you have the sympathetic breathing, where just do a double inhalation, physiological sigh, pardon me, where it's just a that right there will trigger your sympathetic system to go into parasympathetic rest, digest. So you get stressed out. Maybe you just start doing that and practicing those breathing techniques. Maybe it's the art of doing nothing, putting down your phone, putting down anything, and just literally for 5 minutes going outside and closing your eyes and just paying attention to how the wind is hitting your face, the sounds of nature. That right there is huge. That can have a tremendous effect on the rest of your day. And I think we lose sight of that. And for example, if a female, and I'm writing a section on females and how they should be working out differently based off of their cycles. They're on 28-day cycles. Guys, we're on 24 hours. Like we're fine, right? So during your period, on your heaviest flow time, maybe you shouldn't work out. Maybe you should work in. And what does that mean? Okay, you probably shouldn't be lifting a ton of heavy weights or doing like crazy sprint intervals or training for those few days where it's your heaviest part of your cycle, because you're different between your estrogen, your progesterone, a bunch of different things are happening. Maybe you focus on some breath work. Maybe you focus on meditation. Maybe you do yoga that day and you keep your heart rate 90 beats a minute or less. Maybe you do journaling. That's working in on yourself. And that right there, I train a movie star where she's shooting I guess a spinoff like Power Rangers, which is kind of interesting. Legend of the White Dragon, Rachel Brooks Smith. She's okay if I talk about this, but she, as a movie star, is known for having to get in crazy shape in a short amount of time. And I was training her, and she was on her monthly. She's like, I can't do what you prescribed for me today, because let's face it, in the 4-6 weeks that we had, I prescribed her a crazy exercise protocol. But when she called me up and said that she didn't feel well, I said, you know what? Don't work out today, work in. She's like, what? No trainer has ever told me this. And then it put her in this mindset to be okay with taking the physical break to work on the mental. And 2 or 3 days later, she's like, I feel so much better. I didn't put as much pressure on myself. And then her next workouts just were that much better and more efficient because she wasn't kicking herself for not getting that workout in. So I think that's the overall premise right there, is giving you all these different tools in whatever aspect of your life that you can do, that you can just do the minimum of that, the minimum effective dose, the minimum work effort. And then from there, that will help everything else. And then you can start to add the extra things. Maybe, okay, I'm going to pick this up from the exercise section. I'm going to do this time restricted feeding or fasting for longevity. Okay, and then you start moving that way, as opposed to a lot of people do is jump to what supplements can I take? What's easy? Well, you know what? If you don't have your sleep on point, you don't have your nutrition on point, you don't have your family and everything else, it doesn't matter what you're popping pills. It's not going to fix you, right? So there's my
Sleep is by far my favorite supplement.
yeah, that was my long elevator pitch. That was like the skyscraper pitch.
There you go. I dig it. I dig it. Okay, so how could people find you online? Where are they going to become super fans? And, just like I have become in a very short period of time, where do people go?
Oh, thanks, Cyrus. I'm a fan of you too, buddy. So yeah, Joey Thurman Fit on all social medias, THURMAN, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Technically, I think I have a TikTok, but God, I don't think I've posted in weeks. JoeyThurman.com. And then my podcast is Fad or Future Podcast, available everywhere, fadorfuture.com or joeythurman.com has links there. If you want a free exercise program right now, openfit.com/Joey. It's $8 a month after that, I believe, on my OpenFit program. And I do have my own app coming out called Sculpt System, which will be out pretty much any day now.
Talk to us about OpenFit real quick. What exactly is that?
Yeah, so OpenFit is owned by Beachbody, a massive company. And OpenFit, my program is called Fast Results, where the number one question I get is, I don't have time. I don't have time. How do I work out without time? All of my workouts are 20 minutes or less, more like 10 to 15 minutes long. And 5 of them are body weight, and 5 of them are just using those little mini band loop bands. So 5 of them are predominantly core and trunk focused, as people love, doing abdominal work, but there's an aspect of getting your heart rate up, so you're going to, burn more fat. There is some research now that we have these fatty pockets that might potentially be able to burn a little bit more localized fat, but I think overall just working your entire body is going to help you burn that fat. Obviously, nutrition is huge too. And then the mini band, I've got a booty band workout one there. There's a full body workout. There's even a recovery workout with mini bands, and people lose sight on actually recovering correctly. So I'm doing a stretching, active release, mobility workout in there too. And I think it's $8 a month after the 2-week trial. So openfit.com/Joey.
Got it. And just for clarity here, are those 10 exercises, the 5 that are resistance exercises, and the 5 that aren't, are those is that all the exercises that people will get, or do you have new workouts that are coming over the course of time?
Yeah, the OpenFit, the platform is great. So I've got 10 that I shot, which is like a P90X type style, right? Where you're following along with me. I'm doing the exercises. But as part of OpenFit, they have all these other programs and these other trainers and live workouts as well that you can do. There's hundreds of workouts on there. So whether it's, taking my program or doing a live workout with another trainer on there, it's $8 a month for the entire platform, which is pretty crazy. And there's Jen Wiederstrom, who was a trainer on Biggest Loser. There's Kelsey Heenan. There's Jordan Morello. There's a bunch of different trainers that have programs, and then they have these live trainers too, where you can sign up and do a kickboxing class, in your home, or you can do a yoga or Pilates or anything. So it's a pretty tremendous platform.
And these are all designed to be performed in your house. Like, you don't need to be going to a gym in order to perform these workouts, correct?
Yeah, none of them are meant to be used in a gym. Some they'll say like you need dumbbells for this, but that's it. It's all meant to be an in-home workout program.
Got it. Okay, that's great. Especially, like COVID, just like you were saying, kind of taught us that we don't need to be going to a gym. You don't have to have a membership anywhere. The only thing you need is literally a floor. 3 feet by 3 feet, 4 feet by 4 feet. You just need a small amount of space, maybe a couple of bands here and there, and that's it. Your body is one of the best resistance tools that you have at your disposal. And, participating in OpenFit and, using these principles in your life can make a huge difference to everything: your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health. It's literally the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, let me leave you with this caveat. So I struggle with depression. I've been diagnosed with depression when I was 13 years old. I wanted to walk to the Jefferson Barracks Bridge in St. Louis and jump off. They had me on suicide watch. And I find that one of the best things for my mental health is sleep, nutrition, and moving every single day. Does it fix it some days? No, some days are still bad, but I do feel better every single day. So I just want people to realize, like, hey, I do what I do for a living. I have to look a particular way for a lot of the things that I'm doing, but I still struggle, and everybody has those struggles, but being aware of them and what helps you is what's going to get you to the next day.
Can't disagree with any of that. Yeah, exercise is, I mean, it's almost like, I joke about the fact that like plant-based nutrition is the most powerful pharmaceutical medication ever devised, right? There's very few conditions that a plant-based diet can't significantly improve, if not completely solve. Exercise is also one of the most powerful pharmaceutical medications ever discovered, because not only can improve your physical health, make you stronger, make you more fit, help you lose adipose tissue, but the internal changes that come along with that are profound. Improved digestion, improved blood flow, improved mental health, decreased anxiety, decreased depression, improved spiritual health, and the list goes on. So regardless of which type of archetype you are, Archetype 1, Archetype 2, or Archetype 3, there's always, always, always small things you can do, small, tiny micro habits that can dramatically improve your physical health and everything inside as well. Joey, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate your time today. A lot of what you said here is like, I'm going to take it and I'm going to incorporate it in my life, and I'm going to help, use this methodology to improve my overall fitness and everything that comes along for the ride. So thanks a ton for being here today, my man.
Well, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate everybody for listening too.